I'm here today with Tanner from Code, who is the COO of Code, and we're going to talk all things around consumer-ready mobile applications for P2P payments as well as micropayments. And I think in general, we just want to chat about like bringing crypto experiences to the everyday user, which I'm excited for. So welcome, Tanner.
Yeah, good to be here.
So maybe you can just give us like a minute intro to yourself and kind of how you came into the crypto world before we get into code.
Yeah, that's actually a good. It's a fun story. I got into crypto around 2013. It was fortuitous experience. I was in college at the time. I played varsity football, so I'd miss a lot of class if we had away games. And I had this one finance course where the prof, in hindsight, is genius. It was just 30 of us in this class. And rather than teach any lessons, he just assigned each student a class that they had to teach a lecture on. So he didn't have to teach any classes the whole semester, which was genius.
That
But
is genius.
I
I
uh,
love it.
I was away at a game the day that he assigned all the topics. So there was like 30 kids, 30 topics, and then pulled from a hat. Everyone had to pick a topic. And at the time, some of the top ones were like Google Glass and some of these other newer things. And I wasn't there, so then I got an email from the prof. He's like, "Okay, so you get the one topic that no one picked, and it's Bitcoin." So then I got assigned Bitcoin. So I spent a whole semester learning about Bitcoin, and I had to deliver a lecture to the class at some point during that semester. So that's what got me started on it. I was very lucky. I don't think anyone that did presentations on Google Glass or Pokemon Go really took that anywhere. But yeah, it ended up being fortunate. I started at Kick Messenger around the same time. I started just as an intern, and then was happy to find that a bunch of the early team was also into crypto on a more personal level. So started chatting about things, playing with some different ideas. That would have been around 2013, 2014, and then ramped up from there. Worked at Kick for a number of years until we sold it in 2019. We built this whole uh, payments product inside Kick as a proof of concept before launching our own cryptocurrency. So helped launch Kin in 2017, went through a few technical migrations, sold Kick 2019, and been working on code ever since. So yeah, a lot of stops along the way, but all started with very fortunate missing one college class back in 2013.
I love that he was sort of teaching you the golden rule about delegation there.
Yeah,
Probably the most useful thing you could have learned.
yeah,
um,
exactly.
okay, so that sets us up nicely to chat about code. And I believe that code is actually or at least Mert talking about code is like the origination of the only possible on Solana like
Yeah,
tagline, which has since been used a lot. And this was relating to, I think he was kind of talking about the butter smooth UX and the smooth user experience of code. So do you want to introduce to the listeners like what is code?
yeah. I mean, very simply, Code is a payments app. Uh, to expand on that a little bit more, it's self-custodial, so anyone in the world can use it, and anyone who uses it has full control of their money. Uh, but as you mentioned, we've worked very hard to make a simple user experience. So I've used Code with honestly hundreds of people at this point all around the world, and a lot of those people have never touched crypto before, and just about everyone was able to get onboarded in less than 60 seconds, immediately got it, which I think is a really important thing for any consumer experience. Ideally, you get someone to download an app, and within 60 seconds, they've found some type of value and understand it. And from there, we've been uh, pleased to see a lot of positive feedback within crypto, but we're really just getting started. So can chat a bit more about what we've built so far and then where we're going. But honestly, it might be helpful just for anyone that's watching. We could even, I know you and I have used it together before, but could demo a bit of the experience. That way, if people haven't tried
Yeah.
code yet, they would be able to see what's different about it.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's a good idea
uh,
because talking about UX is one thing, but it's another thing to actually see the experience.
totally,
So
totally. So
yeah, we can demo a payment if you like.
yeah, awesome. So the first part of the experience that we rolled out, and this is what kicked off that whole only possible on Solana thing, I showed this to Mert back in, I want to say the spring, because we hadn't rolled this out publicly yet. And the first part of the experience is digital paper cash. So to us, the most powerful application of cryptocurrency is money. It was the original vision of the Bitcoin white paper. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with crypto and the blockchain, but at the core, money is what makes it all work. So specifically permissionless money, you can use that with anyone in the world. Very powerful. So when we look at money, what's the most easily understood form of money? And to us, that's cash. You go anywhere in the world, you hand someone a cash bill, they instantly understand that's money. Even if there's a language barrier, I can think back to times where I was traveling in some remote areas that I didn't speak any of the local language, but I can easily transact with people with cash. So that's what we wanted to do, is apply that same cash metaphor to crypto to make it really simple for people to understand. And it forces some tight technical constraints. So the first part of the experience, and remind me, you're in Colombia, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So I'm going to send you some Colombian pesos. So what I can do is I can load up, I just picked 20,000 Colombian pesos, which is like $10 US, and I can load that up into a cash bill and I can just hand this to you. So if you pull up code on your
Okay.
device, and then if you just grab that bill, and then
Okay,
pull it
so
right
that
onto your
is
phone.
taking it onto my phone, and then I can receive here,
Yeah,
put in wallet, and it's good to go.
there you go.
Okay.
And then, do you want to try giving me back? Why don't you try giving me back $1 Canadian? So if you go to Give Kin,
Okay.
and then you
Give
tap the
Kin.
flag.
So I've got a list of different currencies here, and I'll go down to Canadian dollar. Okay. All right. So I'm sending you now. Oh,
Yeah,
let me see if I
just,
can.
there we go. Oh, there we go.
Does that work?
Got it. Yeah,
Wow,
got
it's
it.
crazy fast.
Yeah, and the other part of the experience, so that was the first part, is the ability to hand cash back and forth. We recognize often people are not transacting in a synchronous environment like this. They're not on a Zoom call, or in this case, a podcast, or in person together. So we wanted to make it simple for people to just send each other money, even if they're not together. So the other thing I can do, second thing we launched was something called cash links. So I can load up some cash in a link, and I'm going to send this to you. I'll send it to you over Telegram, because I think that's how we were most recently chatting.
Okay.
So I can load up some cash in a link, and then I can send that to you. So, and I recognize, okay, so I just sent it to you on Telegram. So you should be able to tap that link and then
Okay. So I tap the
get the cash.
link, and it's going to. Oh, what happens? Let me try it again.
It might be,
Uh,
I see you're on Android. So
I'm on
I think
Android.
you're on,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
So
on Android.
we rolled out cash links on iOS only. So with Android, you're probably on a legacy build that doesn't have cash links yet, but you should get that soon. So
Okay,
I'll send you
cool.
some cash at another time.
Yeah, I mean, I've tested it on an iPhone, the cash link, and the experience can be described a bit like the P2P once you receive, right? You then see the bill on screen, and then you can, accept it, or yeah,
Totally.
yeah. So very cool, very cool, and I've also tested it with a few people, and the first thing that you hear from them is just like the UX is very smooth, and it's very easy to understand like what's happening, which is something that we've struggled with in crypto in general. We somehow managed to make everything very complicated. Like
Yeah.
a collectible is a non-fungible token. Like it's like very difficult. I mean, it's technical. Often we apply technical language to products, which makes it a bit difficult for like regular people to get into. So maybe you can speak a bit more about like the kind of the experience that you're trying to bring to the user. Because we've just demoed it, but like who are you hoping to use the app, and like what kind of use cases are you expecting them to execute, and like in general, how should they feel about using the app?
Yeah. Great set of questions. to put it simply, over time, we're targeting permissionless payments. That can mean
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different things. That's how we got into the space. We built Kick, grew to hundreds of millions of users, tried to build the WeChat of the West in Kick. Ted, our founder and CEO, wrote a blog post early 2014, so almost 10 years ago, titled "The Race to Become the WeChat of the West." Interesting backstory. WeChat, which is this basically the operating system for China. Everyone uses WeChat not just to talk, but for commerce. They get their mortgages through WeChat. Everything runs through WeChat. They actually started WeChat after they saw Kick go viral in like 2011, 2012. So then we saw how WeChat then grew. So then 2014, Ted wrote this blog post that's going to be the next iteration of chat and mobile in the Western world. Wrote this blog post, and then WeChat invested in Kick at $1 billion valuation in 2015. So we worked for years to try to build that out in the Western world. The challenge, though, is outside of China, because China's its own interesting economy that is very different than anywhere else in the world. So the challenge outside of China, and especially in the Western world, is traditional rails are just not going to allow you to, traditional financial rails to be specific, are not going to allow you to roll out any type of global payments product. There's an unbelievable amount of red tape, and even the structural components of how money moves is antiquated, slow, and has a lot of failure points. So that's what got us excited about the Bitcoin white paper and why it spoke so strongly to us is this idea of a purely peer-to-peer electronic cash system enables you to build products for a global audience with money. Because with self-custodial crypto, you can roll out payments to a global audience all at once because users are in full control of their money. You don't have to do money transmission licenses, and you don't have to do any of this complicated custodial operational security or OPSEC because it's just pure software enabling users to transact with anyone, anywhere. So I gave a bit of the abridged story. We worked on that for a number of years, sold Kick in 2019, and then started working on code around that time. And over time, we want to enable payments in a lot of different arenas. But we started with P2P. So the experience we just demoed, handing cash back and forth, and then loading up in a link and sending it through a cash link. P2P was a helpful starting point because it allows us to get to market really quickly. And it allows us to define the technology constraints that we need or the set of technology that we need to enable this experience and get feedback really quickly. So digital paper cash that we showed forces a lot of hard technical constraints. Cash, the physical cash is instant, it's private, and it's free. I tried to hand you a $20 bill. You can grab it from me right away. There's no failures. You just grab it. It's private. I hand you some cash. You don't get to see what else is in my bank account that I took the cash out of. You also don't get to see who I've been transacting with. And there's no transaction cost. So we wanted to take that same metaphor and apply it to crypto. So we had to build this whole set of technology, this L2 on top of Solana that guarantees instant, private, free transactions, free in the sense that we subsidize everything. So that was a helpful constraint to force us to make a really simple, powerful consumer experience. And even things like how do we do transactions through a custom scan code. So that bill that we were handing back and forth, that's a custom code. We actually load up an entire Solana transaction in that code, and that's how we're transacting back and forth. And then also how do users interact with this? Everything from the onboarding to how do they use it with their friends, the friction points, all those things that are important to get early user feedback. So we started with P2P, and that's what everyone so far has seen. And we think P2P in general, like peer-to-peer payments, powerful and important, but as a standalone use case, we don't think P2P on its own is going to create the breakout app in crypto. And that might seem surprising since that's what we rolled out first. But like I said, that is just called the opening salvo for us to define the technology, get a bunch of market feedback. And it might feel a bit contrarian too, because a lot of people are working on pure P2P crypto apps. And I think over time, P2P crypto will be powerful and important, but it's going to be hard for a few reasons. Like, one, to be really blunt, you're not really solving a problem right now. In fact, they're probably creating more of a problem. A lot of people, pretty much everyone, has ways that they do peer-to-peer transactions today. In the US, you've got Venmo, you've got Cash App. Those work pretty well. But even in countries like Canada, like our peer-to-peer system in Canada is terrible. But everyone uses it because it's an existing habit, it works. And then when you bring crypto into it, the actual full life cycle of the peer-to-peer interaction is actually quite complex. So once I get crypto onto code and you have code, we can hand it back and forth. That's really cool. I can load it up in a link. I can send it to you. And there's a ton of cool use cases that come out of that. Like we've seen a lot of adoption with people tipping each other on Reddit or on Twitter because I don't have to get any of your payment details. We don't have to exchange any contact info. I just load up money in a link. You can grab the link and then it's done. So there's been some cool interactions that way. But for the most part with peer-to-peer, like if you look at Venmo, I think the average transaction size on Venmo is like $70 to $80. So we're talking about real value that people exchange. In Canada, the P2P, last time I checked, it was like $155 is on average what people are transacting when they're doing peer-to-peer payments. So, it's people paying each other back for dinner or paying the babysitter or buying something on Facebook Marketplace. And at the end of that life cycle, so when I say that transaction life cycle, at the end of it, someone needs to take that and then pay their bill or buy the next dinner or buy groceries. And if I'm paying you crypto, no matter if it's Bitcoin, USDC, CAN, or anything, as soon as I have to take that crypto and get it into dollars to then pay something, that's where things get a little bit complex. So when I say it's not really solving a problem, people today have ways to exchange dollars or pesos that seem to work, and it all flows through the traditional financial rails. So over time, I think that will change. I'm not bearish on P2P payments over the long arc, but in the near term, I think it's going to be tough to get mainstream consumer adoption on peer-to-peer alone because you're asking people to change an existing user behavior where most people would say, yeah, but it works.
Yeah.
That's pretty slick. Yeah, it's cool. Oh, that was cool to hand cash back and forth. But, it works for me doing this thing. And the question we get all the time, not just with code, I can go back to 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, any year that I've tried to get family or friends onto crypto, the question that I get and everyone on our team has gotten is, okay, but what can I do with it? And that's what we're trying to answer. And for that, we have found there's this unique opportunity, we believe, in micropayments for the web. And we have a unique perspective on that, given that we built a consumer app that was used by hundreds of millions of people. We built developer platforms within Kick that were used by hundreds of developers with tens of millions of users that all had exposure to that. And something we tried to do for years was micropayments, but traditional rails just don't support it. And there's a lot of developers that are not monetizing today, but if given the opportunity to monetize their micropayments, they would. And that's an exciting opportunity for us because it's only recently become possible with not even, so if we take a step back, micropayments are not possible through cards because, and I'll define a micropayment as something under $1. So 50 cents, 25 cents, 75 cents, $1. Not possible with cards because of their cost structures. They have these anti-fraud systems that have minimum fees. It's usually 30 cents to $1 minimum fee plus some 3 to 5% take rate on top of that. So if you want to charge 25 cents for something as a web developer, you can't use any of the card processors. And that's because of chargeback issues. So crypto doesn't have chargebacks. So that's a big innovation there. But crypto, for the most part, has been slow and expensive. So if I want to charge for something as a web developer, if I was to use Bitcoin or Ethereum, I'm going to end up with higher fees than credit cards and much slower because I have to wait for a bunch of network confirmations. Now, Solana has cheap enough fees and fast enough transactions that you could actually do this as a web developer. Now, there are some rough edges that we've smoothed out, but that's something that we've found to be this exciting fertile ground because it's at this intersection of a unique problem. We know tons of web developers that have this problem not monetizing their micropayments. And then on the other side, they're not being served by anyone today. And then even better, the people that could potentially serve them are not going to, can't. They're not going to touch it. Visa, MasterCard, etc. But we know tons of people that work there, and they all say, yeah, we've talked about micropayments, but we're not going to touch it because our business is just not set up to do that. So that's what we've been focused on for the last few months. We started with P2P. We got a ton of good learnings that's helped refine the technology stack, refine the product experience. And now we've taken that and applied that to this permissionless micropayments platform for the web that we'll be introducing probably in the next month or so. And it'll start simple. You can charge anywhere from 5 to 100 cents. We built a few sample apps that I've been playing around with. They've been a lot of fun. And then we'll hand that out we'll give access to the SDK to a bunch of other web developers and start rolling out from there. And then that'll be, a wedge. Typically, you want to start with a wedge and then expand from there. So we're staying constrained with micropayments for the web, and over time, we think that will expand. But then it also fortifies the P2P experience, because now P2P, let's say I give $5 to someone, and they say, okay, but what can I do with this? And I say, okay, well, you could go spend it on all these places online. And that's a net new experience too. It's not, well, you could cash that out, take the transaction fees, and then go buy yourself a coffee. It's like, okay, well, why don't you just give me $5 so I can go buy a coffee and I have to take all those steps? Now I'm saying, here's $5 and you can go do something that you could never have done before.
Got you. One question that comes up immediately with the micropayments is, you mentioned that there's a lot of other steps that the user has to take in terms of that full journey. Is there not also some additional steps in the micropayments setting where the user has to have for example, like a code wallet with some money on it in order to actually make microtransactions?
Totally. Yeah, it is another step. We think the fact that a web developer could have a mobile wallet-like code as the interface is a powerful tool for a web developer and for a user. And I'll expand on that a little bit more. As a mobile wallet, I can have full control of my money. There's the question of how do I get money into that. I'll talk about that in just a second. But now as a user, I've got this mobile wallet, so I can transact anywhere on the web. I go to this website. I could go to louisblog.com. Let's say you wanted to start charging 25 cents for individual articles or individual podcasts even. You want to charge 50 cents for an individual podcast, so people could scan, swipe to pay on their code wallet. It's all secure, self-custodial, and then it unlocks. That's your ability to collect payments. The second step of the micropayments SDK is the ability to make payments. So then as a web developer, you can imagine different experiences where a bunch of people could pay in, let's say, to participate in a tournament. And let's say 100 people all pay in, they participate in this tournament, and then whoever wins then gets the pay out of the pot. And then the third part of that is there's a communication layer. So web developers don't have a way to do push notifications today, because you come to a web property, you have no way to identify a unique user. You might be able to do cookies, but no one has push notifications on their desktop. So your best bet is maybe to get someone's email. But if someone has ever paid you as a web developer on your web platform, now you have a direct payment channel, and then we can enable on-chain messaging. So payments are private, messaging on-chain is all encrypted, so it's a direct channel from developer to user. So you, as a podcast host, as an example, you could charge 50 cents for an episode. Someone pays that, and now you have a way to message them in the future. So then you could send them a message. They get a push notification on code saying, there's a new Cove episode. Do you want to go listen to this? And maybe you even want to say, you can list this next one for free. And then they get that one for free. So that's one of the benefits of a user having to or getting to use an external mobile wallet, is now it's this mobile interface that a web developer can leverage. You asked the question, how do users get money into the app? There's two parts to this. One, on code, we are going to turn back on the ability for users to earn kin. So you could earn $5 by inviting someone else to try code. And we saw a lot of success with that early on. We shut that off for a bit because we kind of seen the growth trajectory we needed, and then we were focused on micropayments. But we're going to turn that back on when we launch micropayments. So people can earn. So call it someone who doesn't have experience buying crypto. They can get their first balance and start using it. Buying in-app is something that will be a priority for us and actually has been a priority. The challenge, and this is another whole strain of conversation, is it's very difficult to do reliable in-app purchase of crypto. And if I just give you the 60-second flyover, we have worked with tons of on-ramp solutions. And basically anyone who does card payments has very high failure rates, and it's not their fault. It's just the merchant codes attached to crypto get denied all the time. So you're like 50-50 shot someone's going to get a successful payment. That's why you see all these declines on MoonPay, Ramp, Transact, any of these things. So then the alternative is to do direct bank transfer. And the difference there is when you're buying with a credit card, I'm spending the credit card company's money and then offering to pay them back. When you're doing direct bank transfer, I'm just spending my own money. So now the on-ramp can take on that fraud risk, but then they have to build out their whole fraud system as well. So all that to say, it's a priority and we want to add it. The challenge is it's a very hard structural problem, which comes all the way back to you can get a lot of utility out of $5 when you're doing micropayments online. When you have to start dealing in large dollar values and you have high failure rates with cards, then it gets a little trickier.
That makes sense. We had Ben from Meso on recently, and that seems to be what they're trying to solve, and hopefully, they're very hopeful that they can make some progress there. It seems to be one of those perpetually unsolvable problems that you have these really high fees to actually on ramp.
Yeah, and I know Ben, and I think what they're building is great. I'm very keen to see it in market and see how it does, and they're approaching it how we would approach it if we were wanted to build a solution for that, where they're doing the hard work to be closer to the metal and not rely on card networks, but they're going direct to consumer, but it has its own challenges as well.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of skipped over, you kind of like dropped a little that you guys are an L2 on Solana. You kind of dropped that in very quickly. I think it would be fun to just rewind a little bit back to that. And maybe you can just lay out like how that actually works, because I'm sure that most listeners who are familiar with the term L2 would be thinking about Ethereum roll-ups, blah, blah, blah. So maybe you can briefly give us a bit of a technical insight into how code is working under the hood.
Yeah, happy to dive into that. So code, or the L2 that we've built, is different than an Ethereum L2 in the sense, like you said, there's no roll-ups, because on Ethereum, you have to combine a bunch of transactions, you batch them, and then you write that in one transaction to Ethereum because the fees are so high. So that allows you to go from $1 to $2 to $3 a transaction to like 10 cents a transaction. On Solana, individual transactions are fractions of a penny, so we don't need to do roll-ups. So it's a little bit different in that sense. So I'll just set that up front. The reason we built this, by the way, is so we started working on Solana. We've been building on Solana for a long time. We started testing a free testnet. I got to know Anatoly and the team very early. I can actually remember, this is a bit of a segue, but doing a bunch of reference calls when they were raising money, like well before they even launched mainnet, because we had tested a bunch of the code base. So very familiar with Solana. Have been using it for a long time, building on it for a long time. And it was about a year ago, we realized that even something like 400 millisecond transaction times are going to add too much latency for that cache experience. I need to show you, Bill. You need to be able to grab it instantly, not a half second. Even a half second feels a little bit slow, but you can kind of massage that a bit. But the other thing with Solana is sometimes you have transactions that are dropped or not included. So to my knowledge, no transaction that's been included in a block has been rolled back so far. And that's what a lot of people will look at as a metric. It's like, yeah, if it gets included, you can optimistically assume that it'll go through because we haven't had any rollback so far. And technically that should be very infinitesimal that it would ever happen. But the challenge is a lot of times things don't get included in a block. So I don't know if you've used any wallet on Solana recently other than Code, like Phantom or other ones. you'll get some failed transactions often. Like you try to submit one, it's like, oh, please retry. You tap retry. Maybe it works on the next one. Maybe you have to retry again. And that's something we just couldn't have. We needed to make sure that I can't show you the cash, you can grab it instantly. And if, let's say, there was a small outage, even for a few minutes, we can't have things not working. So that's where we started building this, what turned into an L2 on Solana, is we wanted to solve for transactions are always instant, guaranteed they're going to play out, and then a basic level of privacy. So to summarize it really simply, all Code wallets are smart contract based. So there's this time lock program. So the time lock program is an on-chain program on Solana. It's been audited. Now it's had a lot of soak time in market. And what it does is it guarantees funds availability of funds for any wallet that is interacting with that contract. So you spin up a wallet on Code. It's attached to this time lock contract, and then the time lock contract guarantees that there are funds in your wallet. So you can't do a double spend. And then what happens through the Code L2 is, so let's say I want to make a payment to you, I'm going to load up a cash link. So sign a transaction, just like any other self-custodial wallet would sign that transaction. And then it's sent to, call it our sequencer, our version of the sequencer, called scheduler. And what that does is we use a concept of durable nonces. So on Solana, there's no mempool. On Ethereum, you could submit a transaction, it sits in this mempool and then until it gets picked up. On Solana, there is no mempool, but there is a concept on Solana called the durable nonce. And I'm getting into the weeds a little bit here, but basically what that means is when you construct a transaction on Solana, typically you would include a recent block hash, so previous hash from a confirmed block. A durable nonce, you can, instead of attaching one of those, you can assign a durable nonce. And basically what it does is it gives you the ability to include it in a future block, and you have some retry logic as well. If it doesn't get included, you could replay that on another block in the future. So what that allows us to do is, what's functionally happening is I sign a transaction, it goes to the sequencer, and there's this treasury pool. So the treasury pool has a bunch of kin in it. And as soon as the treasury pool gets my signed transaction, it forwards the transaction to you, a transaction to you. But then the treasury pool is holding my signed transaction with this durable nonce. We call it internally like a check. So it's a signed check. And the treasury pool can cash that check at any point in the future. So there's a guarantee that it's going to get those funds because I've signed that transaction. The time lock program guarantees that the funds are available. Very similar to the time lock program in Bitcoin Lightning Network. So now that treasury pool can forward a payment to you, so you get funds instantly. And then the treasury pool can then cash my check, that signed check, at any point in the future. So it's kind of like an IOU to the treasury pool, but it's verifiably on-chain, available funds. So it's all still self-custodial. There's no trust mechanism in between anything because these are all running through on-chain programs. And then what that allows us to do is attach a basic level of privacy to all of this. Because now me as a Code user, I actually am transacting using a bunch of different wallets. It's not just one wallet. So my balance is split across a bunch of different wallets. I want to send a payment to you, Louis. So it constructs a transaction pulling from a bunch of my wallets that are all, the client, my phone, knows that I own all of those accounts, but they're not obviously connected on chain, constructs a payment, sends it to the treasury pool. It's forwarded, the treasury pool forwards a transaction to you, but it's starting to accumulate all of these signed checks from a bunch of other users. And then it can play all of those out at once. So it effectively obfuscates all of these payments. So effectively, I could be paying you, and Alice could be paying Bob, and all of those signed checks sit in this treasury pool or sit with the sequencer. And then at a certain point, it plays it out all on chain, and it can play those out in sequence. Does that make sense broadly?
Yeah, it
I know I
does.
dove into
Yeah, I
the
mean,
details.
it comes across a little bit like, yeah, I mean, it kind of you're scrambling the transaction by caching or by breaking the sender payment across a few different payments, and then the IOU is cached by the sequencer or whatever it's referred to as at a later time, and then it's able to check that everything was actually sent. Once it sums up all the IOUs that have been sent, and the recipient, I guess it just gets sent in one go, the payment, because it has to be immediate, right?
Yeah, so it would go to your you get the full payment to what's called your temporary incoming account, and then it splits it out into a bunch of individual accounts that
Okay,
are all connected.
got you. Okay, yeah, super cool. And how does it work?
Which, sorry, I
Like,
should also
mm-hmm.
clarify. There's one other on-chain program I didn't mention: the splitter contract. So the splitter contract is what will split it into different buckets, we call them. So all of that runs through an on-chain program as well. So then you can't, as a user, you can't trace it back through and be like, okay, it went here and then went to these wallets. So then therefore all of those wallets must belong to Louis. It's going from your temporary incoming account to an on-chain program that sends back out to your individual wallets. So it's privacy through obfuscation. And our view on this is there should be a basic level of privacy for anyone transacting, especially peer-to-peer. It applies to micropayments as well. Let's say I want to read this one blog post, but I don't want everyone wondering what my political affiliation is because I chose to read this one blog post by someone who's maybe further leaning one way or the other than all my friends. And I want to be able to read that. I don't want people thinking that I'm making any type of a statement through that. But let's say peer-to-peer payments, I want to pay you $5. If I was just pay you $5 using Phantom or Trust Wallet or anything else, you would be able to tap through. Let's say I get your public address. I send you some, let's say I send you $5 USDC. You could tap through to the transaction history and then see, okay, there's Tanner's wallet. Okay, what's his balance? Oh, interesting. Oh, and then who else has he been paying? And what has he been paying for? And you can see all of that. So we want a basic level of obfuscation where I could pay you. You don't get to see my balance or anything else. One of the thoughts was about where privacy can even just break down is Breakpoint last year, a bunch of people were tipping bartenders with Phantom Wallet. He just had a code up and people were tipping him. And if that bartender was evil, he could just go through and be like, oh, that guy just tipped me. Oh, he's got $200,000 worth of Sol in his wallet. Let me just take a 5-minute break and go shake him down in the parking lot when he leaves, as an example. Like there shouldn't be that. Luckily, that didn't happen from my knowledge. But like that's where things can break down without privacy.
Yeah, I like the way that the elusive guys put it, where it's like it's kind of like having HTTPS when you're browsing the web or doing like an e-commerce transaction. There should just be a basic level of privacy. It's not about, maybe it's not about like that really extreme case which people from Monero might refer to about like being, maybe a political dissident or something. It's just about everyday basic level of protection, which completely makes sense. One question I have with regard to the L2 is like, do you need to therefore bridge the kin off the code wallet? Like, how does that work to actually get it back onto Solana, like the mainnet?
Yeah, so I mean, kin is still all these transactions individually are being written to mainnet, so it's not
Okay.
like unlike an Ethereum L2 that uses rollups where it combines all these transactions and then eventually writes it to the main chain. Or if you think about Lightning on Bitcoin, where you have these payment channels, and then at a certain point, it's like, okay, let's settle that up on chain. Eventually, all of these things play out. The reason we built this is we wanted to be able to say to Louis, okay, yes, you got the money, because we know that Tanner has the money, and we know it's going to play out on chain, but it hasn't yet. So let's just forward Louis some money. So you actually do have it. Like you have kin in your wallet, you could immediately withdraw it. But then it's sitting in this treasury pool, and we could say, let's cash the check later. So then we eat some of that latency through a smart contract instead of putting that latency onto the user.
Yeah, got you. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the whole like app chain thesis, where app chains want to have certain little like minor configuration differences, but that's a different topic for another day. Yeah, really enjoyed that walk down the technical side. Let's go from the technical side more to the currency economic side. One thing that you might have heard when we were doing the demo is you were mentioning like different currencies, but also kin. Can you like unpack like what is the core currency of Code, and then like what the thesis is behind using that currency?
Yeah. So all transactions that were all payments on code that we're doing is kin. So I'm giving you kin, you're giving me kin. If I'm spending on a website, I'm spending kin. We represent all of that in any fiat currency. We think that's simplest for the users. So rather than say you have 1,500,000 kin, we just say you've got, I don't know, $100 of kin. And that's how we can transact. When I gave you 20,000 pesos, I just said, I want to give Louis 20,000 pesos. We're transacting in kin, so it's a floating currency. But
Mm,
everything is running on one common cryptocurrency, kin, under the hood. And we give one of our values as companies, we look at all the options. So we talk about this experience. What are all the options for what base currency we could use? We wanted to use one currency. We think that's important because it should be simple for a user. I shouldn't have to say, okay, I want to send 20,000 pesos of A, B, or C. I just want to send 20,000 pesos
mm,
to Louis. So we wanted to do one currency. And then within one currency, there's a question, do we do floating currency or do we do stablecoin?
mm,
And to us, a floating currency is very powerful in that it has this natural ability to align incentives of a community of users. Very powerful thing. Bitcoin really was the first experiment of this, and it brought a disparate group of people together to work on a common thing to drive adoption. And that's one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is its economic design. That through a floating currency and a bunch of people using it, it started to drive more adoption, and there's aligned incentives to drive more adoption. So if you have the opportunity to tap into incentive alignment through a community, I think that's very powerful. So then within floating currency, kin is attractive for a few reasons. One, it's been through the SEC gauntlet. So we didn't talk about this too much, but Kick was sued by the SEC in 2017, went through a 2.5-year lawsuit with the SEC, came out the other side with a very favorable settlement that did not require kin to register as a security going forward. So very positive. Kin is also on Solana. We've done a few technical hops, and Solana, in our view, is the best place to build consumer products. And then Kin has no inflation and no foundation. So it has a lot of strong properties of a floating currency. On the stablecoin question, because we get this all the time, I actually think USDC has more friction for a P2P experience than a floating currency, say Bitcoin or Kin or something like that. And the reason is you still have all the friction of having to take USDC and get it into dollars, but you don't get any of the benefit of the speculative side of cryptocurrency. So if you were to give someone USDC and they want to use it on something, they still have to take it to an exchange it for dollars, and then go spend it somewhere. Whereas at least with a floating currency, let's say Bitcoin, if I want to pay you back in Bitcoin, you could take that and then hold it. And there's some utility in that because we'll call it an inflation hedge against the US dollar. So, I think there's this meme that payments apps will only work with USDC. And I don't necessarily think that's true. And I don't know if we've really seen anyone prove out the thesis one way or the other. So we're focused on making Kin work to start. But like I said, we look at all the options. So we have this discussion all the time. Should we integrate USDC? How should we integrate USDC? If we did, what would that look like? And it's not that we've closed the door on it, but we want to keep it simple and just one currency to start.
yeah, got you. I mean, I have to say, like anecdotally from the conversations I've had, one of the first questions people tend to have is like, "Oh, does it have stable coins or something?" But yeah, I guess I can see both sides. I mean, I saw Ted on Twitter saying, speaking a little bit about the modern stablecoin is not really anything like what was envisioned with Bitcoin. I mean, it's kind of permissioned. So there's
Mm-hmm.
also that element, which also I think to probably some older crypto people has some is compelling. Um, I'd like to move now more because you were mentioning that Solana is a great place to build a consumer application, and I'd like to get your take on I guess on that in a bit more detail, and like how to get adoption for consumer applications, like how important is distribution? Because I think that you guys, with regard to Kick, you're one of the few teams that have actually already, built a very highly scaled consumer application within like the crypto space. So yeah, would love to just get any kind of thoughts you've got so far on, like, I guess, the current status quo, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in consumer product in general, not just crypto, to get adoption, first off, it's very difficult. Like 99% of people do not get adoption. And it needs to be something that is a net new user behavior. Because if it's anything incremental, it's going to be very challenging, almost impossible to get people to switch what they're doing and start doing something else.
Mm.
Like, honestly, Threads from Meta is a great example. Threads came out, a bunch of people were like, yeah, this is like a bit of a slicker user experience here or there, but people are not switching en masse from Twitter to Threads because it's very difficult to change user behavior. So anything that's incremental or even a copy of something else is going to be very difficult to then get some type of adoption. So it needs to be some type of a net new behavior. So as crypto in general, we need to be honest with ourselves and look at, okay, what are the things that are not possible with any of the traditional financial rails? So things like Helium and HiveMapper, I'm actually very bullish on, because you would not be able to do a permissionless system where people could just start earning by contributing physical work with traditional payment rails. They would have to set up the most massive company, do all these verified transactions, verify this happened, verify that happened. You can just write smart contracts, and I know I'm oversimplifying, but things like that were not possible previously is where we're going to see more adoption. And honestly, it comes back to just the P2P experience too, is if we're honest with ourselves, we're not going to be able to co-opt existing user behavior. It needs to be something that is net new. And we haven't seen that so far with P2P. Even remittance, as an example. Like, I have some friends that live in other countries that I've done remittance payments to them before. And I've tried to do it with crypto over the years. And when you look at the full experience, when they have to, okay, I send them USDC. I've done a bunch of USDC payments. So I send USDC, and then they get that, and then they have to take it to an exchange and try and connect that to their bank account. They're like, honestly, it would be way easier and end up costing less fees if you just sent me something on Western Union. So that's what I've done. I've reverted back to Western Union for now. Now, do I think crypto over time will disrupt that? Yes, but I don't think it'll happen directly. So I think in general, as crypto, we need to start with things that are uniquely enabled by crypto that other people cannot touch, other incumbents, and call it Web 2 or Web 1, like can't touch, and then build from there. And then eventually you can start bending into some of the user experiences that have been captured already. There's a bunch of examples of that have happened through history. Like, I don't know, you look at Microsoft would be a good example. Their wedge was Microsoft Excel, and they were able to get a bunch of people in corporate America using Excel because it was the best spreadsheet platform. And then eventually they can start adding in more things to the bundle, and then they start moving up the stack. And now they're a serious contender for operating system in general. And we've seen that. WeChat is actually a great example. Coming back to them, they started as just a peer-to-peer messenger. So you start with a peer-to-peer messenger. At the time, that was powerful. The reason Kick went viral, coming back to your question about like how do we get adoption early on, is, I mean, it was over a decade ago, so we forget these things. But at the time, Kick got really popular because if you're on BlackBerry or iPhone or Android, you couldn't communicate with each other through a messenger. It was all SMS or, like, at the time,
Crazy.
BBM. Everyone used BlackBerry for BBM. So Kick was now the BBM experience, but across platform. So that was a net new experience no one could do before. And that's why Kick went viral. We forget that because now cross-platform messengers just make sense because everyone's done it. But that's how things start. That's how WeChat started. Cross-platform messenger, you can use across all these phones, and then they start moving up the stack and adding a bunch more payment experiences. So all that to say, with crypto, like, we're going to get mainstream adoption, which is what we need. Like that's what we're here for. Is we're going to have
Yeah.
this new financial system. We need to get people using it, and we need to build things that are solving real problems for consumers that are net new experiences they wouldn't be able to do anywhere else. Um, and honestly, like, my view so far of crypto in general is it kind of feels like, for the most part, and I think so. It's great that we're doing tons of experimentation, building new things. I think it's awesome. But if we're being really honest with ourselves as an industry, it kind of feels like it's this big hackathon across the crypto industry that we're just building products for each other and telling each other how cool that is. But if we actually tried to take that to a mainstream consumer, they're not going to use it. So it's all these incremental improvements that, like you said, we use technical jargon. We're doing things that are really technical that most mainstream consumers aren't going to do. And we just need to get really simple and say, what's something that a billion people want to do that they can't do today? And how can we uniquely enable that with crypto?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that I love the way you put that. There's like I guess there's like a grammar test or something. It's like, is this thing comprehensible and useful for, random family members? Will they get it?
Totally.
Does it help them? Does it help their life? And in the same way that connecting across BlackBerry, iPhone, Android wasn't possible, like, what is that, 10 years ago now or so? Um, who knows in 10 years, like, because right now we have Telegram, we have WhatsApp, we have Facebook Messenger, like quite a few different messengers that now obviously are very ubiquitous, but we don't have the same super apps like in Asia. I mean, I've used Grab, for example, which is like a super app, and they have also Rappi, which I don't think is messaging, but it's kind of a super app in Latin America. We don't really have these super apps in the West so far. Like, just, I mean, it's a bit of a side point, but do you think that they're coming in the West, or is the regulation just too strong that it's not possible?
So I have a two-part answer for this. One, I don't think they're coming in the West, to be really direct, because of regulation and incumbents and bureaucracy and all of these things. But the second part of the answer is, I don't think we should even try to make it happen, even if it was
Mm,
possible through regulation, because crypto has enabled this fundamentally new business model and paradigm that we don't need a super app. We don't need to be competing for mindshare of users, because we can all have shared alignment through a common currency. So if everyone is using the same currency to transact, spend, accept payment, then we can have a bunch of different apps all contributing to that, and everyone will benefit from the appreciation of the adoption of that currency. So for us, even with Code, we're set up as a not-for-profit. We've built all of this infrastructure to show what's possible. So the Code Wallet is a great showcase of what you can do with all of this technology. We've used it as a proving ground for what we want to build within this platform for the web, but that's going to enable a bunch of other developers to start accepting payments. And then over time, we'd love to see other people take the technology we've built and integrate that into their apps, so they could do the same type of payment interactions, integrate a scanner, be able to grab in-hand cash back and forth, be able to grab a request card and pay. And that's something that's uniquely enabled because of crypto as the common currency and incentive layer, but also open infrastructure. Like, we can now build a messaging protocol that's all on chain. So the push notification system that we're building for micropayments, that's all an on chain permissionless messaging protocol. So now, like with Kick before, if we wanted people to integrate sending messages across, they would have to integrate with Kick's servers, and we would have to build out this whole permissioned messaging layer. But now we can do this federated on-chain messaging protocol. So then, as a web developer, you could send push notifications to people in Code, or someone in, I don't know, Snapchat, that, say, integrated the same messaging protocol, and it all runs on chain, permissionless. And there's a lot of power in that.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I suppose the one real benefit of the super app is from the user's perspective. You don't have to worry about managing many different apps. You just go to one place, you get everything done. But I mean, it is this kind of monopoly threat as well, right? Like WeChat, I think, has a
Totally.
complete grip on the whole country, and the idea of something like that breaking out and owning the whole Western sphere as well is kind of scary because it's hard to defeat once they own everything.
Yeah, there's this. I mean, there's two. There's a lot of risks with monopolies, but two risks I would think about is one is a company going evil, and I would say WeChat. Like we've gotten to know a lot of people that at Tencent, WeChat, like very values aligned, but you never want to put your trust in
Mm.
any company, no matter just like anyone at some point can, as a company, if you have all the power, can either go evil or maybe you don't go evil, but you just system goes down or something. And then there's a single failure point. But then the other thing is this lack of innovation. And that's the thing with monopolies is there's a
Mm.
stagnation because you have so much mind share. There's not as much competition for users' attention, but you've got it all. So I also think for consumers, yes, there might be some niceties of having one singular app that you just go and you do everything there. But at the same time, if you were to just take the totality of, if you ran a parallel universe test, super app, no super app, I think you'd have a lot better user experience with no super app because there's going to be competition for mindshare, better user experiences. And then you also, with crypto, have this, because of that, I think you'll drive more adoption and more economic alignment through users and developers.
Yeah, and there's the classic saying like "jack of all trades, master of none." So
Yeah.
that also applies to innovation within each area. Okay, so we're coming up on an hour, but I still want to get a couple more questions through. So with regard to the code ecosystem, we spoke about the micropayments, which is coming very soon, and you guys see a few interesting use cases there. And we spoke about the P2P wallet. Is there any other avenues that you guys see code expanding to after the micropayments platform?
Yeah, great question. Short answer is there's a lot of options. Our hope is that we can both create the technological foundation and show enough inspiration that other people can take what we've built and then contribute. So build their own apps that build out these use cases. So an obvious one would be we are in the midst of building out this on-chain messaging protocol. We have a ton of experience building a messenger. So yeah, maybe we would build a messenger. But our hope would be that someone else would build a messenger because then it allows us to stay focused on building core product and enabling technology. And then someone else can build that out and we'd be happy to help as much as we can, both with the technology and sharing insights. But our goal would be the code ecosystem starts to grow more and more beyond just us. And that's one of the reasons we're excited about the micropayments platform for the web, because now we're enabling web developers to create new and exciting experiences that leverage the code payments product, and then they can contribute as well.
Yeah, got you. Uh, I also I'm curious. I mean, we touched on it a bit before, like with regard to you guys having experience building, a multi-hundred million person application or user application. So for the new builders, for the builders building on Hyperdrive, do you have any sort of words of wisdom, from having built these products? Any lessons you've taken?
Yeah, number one would be absolutely maniacal about user experience, and that might mean, especially it applies to any industry, but I find especially in crypto, it's going to be challenging a lot of, call it, orthodox views on things, and be ultra focused on what the user experience is. So for us, a prime example of that is in code. When you create an account, we encourage you to save your access key, which is your 12 words, to your photos. And for most of crypto, that would probably feel heretical because
Mm.
everything is like, write this down on a piece of paper, save it in a safe place, and don't tell anyone where it is. And for most consumers, especially when you're just getting started with an app and you're using, call it $50 or less, you're at way higher risk of losing those 12 words that you wrote
Mm,
down, of getting your photos hacked. So we're like,
mm,
let's be pragmatic. Let's tell people to save it to their photos because it gets them through the onboarding experience quickly. We're not saying, okay, pause what you're doing, go find a pen and a paper, because then you see a lot of attrition there and it just becomes
mm,
confusing. And a lot of mainstream consumers, because I've seen this onboarding to other apps, then are like, oh, this seems too complex. Yeah, I'm just not going to touch that. So we challenge that orthodox assumption. Do we need to do this? No, for most users, we probably don't. And if a user's balance gets really high, maybe we'll send them a push notification that they should upgrade their security. But let's start really basic. And we also are maniacal about getting user feedback. So that'd be my second point, is talk to users often. And I'm not talking about send someone a DM, but hey, what did you think of the experience? And get 3 lines back. Like, have a live discussion and ask questions like, okay, what did you like about the product? What did you not like about the product? Okay, how could it, is there one tweak we could make that would enable you to do something you want to do? Because that's often, it ends up being like 5 questions deep that we get some unique insight. So honestly, I'll come back to the access key example. We used code with a ton of people, and before it was like, here's your 12 words, save this to your photos. And we would start to see over and over that new users would see the 12 words, be a little bit confused by that. And there would either be some attrition or would slow things down, or people just didn't really know what to do with that. So, like, hey, can we just make it an artifact? So it is still 12 words. If you download code and create an account, you'll see the 12 words, but the 12 words are quite small at the bottom. And we made it this artifact with a QR code. So it's like, here's your
mm,
access key. One thing, not 12 things. One thing, save that to your photos. And then if you get that, if you need to get back into your wallet or use it to restore in another wallet, you can go find it, and then you'll have all the instructions you need there. So I would say for anyone building, maniacal about user experience, that will probably mean that you're going to have to challenge some orthodox beliefs that you might have about how things are done. And then be maniacal about getting constant user feedback and really digging deep. So doing the hard work to get on calls with people. Something that I still do, and I've been doing this since we started rolling out demos, is uh, every week I'm having live conversations with real users. And everyone on our team does that. They are talking to friends, they're talking to family. Anytime we roll out a new feature, we're getting new feedback that way. And it is really helpful to understand, okay, how do we need to make tweaks? And it's not just saying, okay, what do you want to see in the app? And then that becomes our roadmap, because then you're going to have a lot of bloat in your product. And
mm.
honestly, people will ask for contradictory things. You talk to 3 people, they'll say 3 different things that all contradict each other. But you try to pick
Yeah.
out common themes and be like, okay, what is the theme of what they're asking for? What is the theme of the challenge they're having? And then from first principles, how can we approach that and smooth out that experience? And ideally, it's going from, okay, what would make you come back and use the app? Not just how was your first experience? Why are you not coming back 7 days later? Oh, I'm not coming back because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, maybe we need to solve for X, Y, or Z. So with code, it's like, okay, why are people not coming back after 7 days? Talk to a bunch of those users. Like, yeah, it was cool. I used it with some people, but there's nothing I can really do with my balance. So then it's like, okay, yeah, we need to get micropayments out because we need places for them to spend.
Yeah. It's like, if I can TLDR it, it's like you also have to remove your ego a little bit and really be curious with what people are actually experiencing and how it feels to use the application. But I think those are both super, super key. And I want to underscore the importance of really like digging deep with the feedback and not being satisfied with, the initial few answers. Really, very often the gold comes at the bottom.
Yep.
So yeah, really want to underscore that one. I think that's it. That's a great. I think that's a great note to end it on. It's been
Cool.
we're 5 minutes over an hour. It's been a really great chat. I've really enjoyed it. I'm really interested to see what happens with the micropayments platform, and in general, just to see what you guys choose to ship next. I love the approach that you guys have of like setting some constraints and then seeing like what you can do within that. Like, so for example, sticking with kin as the token for the application is a kind of constraint, but then it kind of makes you think about different ways to build the product or improve the product. So yeah, thanks so much, Tanner, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. I think there's a lot of gold there for builders. And yeah, I'll be, of course, testing out the micropayments platform once it goes live.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate having me on. If you are a web developer, go to codepayments.org. That'd be the best place to get any of the docs, and you can start playing around with it. We're collecting emails so that we can give early access. Probably a few weeks away from actually publishing all the docs. But then, honestly, in general, because I know you have a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are building products, especially in the Solana ecosystem. If you ever want to chat or get feedback on your product, just tweet at me, DM me. It's just Tanner Philp, my name, and happy to take a spin and give any feedback.
Perfect. And this is consumer app season. It's time for Solana to grow up and start getting users. So we'll be continuing to have more episodes focusing on consumer apps and on onboarding users at the Cove. Thanks so much, Tanner.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Liv.